Ana Navarro, let me bring you in while we're waiting for President Peña. Here they are. Never mind, Ana, I'll come to you afterwards. Here is President Peña of Mexico and Donald Trump. They are heading to the podium. Let us open up the microphones and watch what happens.
Muy buenas tardes. Escuchemos el mensaje del presidente de los Estados Unidos mexicanos, licenciado Enrique Peña Nieto.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We shall now hear the message of the President of the United Mexican States, Mr. Enrique Peña Nieto. Mr. Enrique Peña Nieto.
Señor representantes de los medios de comunicación, muy buenas tardes.
Representatives of the media, good afternoon to all of you.
El próximo 8 de noviembre,
Next November 8th, the United States people will elect a new president of the United States. I am sure that the electoral process will continue being intense debate, contrast, all of these characteristics of all the grand democratic tradition of the U.S. Just as well Ms. Hillary Clinton as well as Mr. Donald Trump, I have publicly expressed my respect. And it has been with the President and friend Barack Obama. The next President of North America will find in Mexico and its government a neighbor that wants to work constructively to strengthen even more the relationship among our nations and to confront together all the challenges that we face together in common. I believe that there's great opportunities for both countries. If we decide to take advantage of these points as good friends, allied and strategic allies, beginning from a relationship based in mutual respect, even though we may not agree on everything, I trust that together we'll be able to find better prosperity and security without losing sight of security and independence are the most important in all of what we value. Any close relationship needs to be visited and renewed from time to time. We always need to be open to discuss what has worked and what hasn't. How can we improve on things on both sides of the border? How can we clear and understand misunderstandings and understand each other better? So, keeping that in mind, a few days ago I sent a letter to both presidential candidates, both to Ms. Hillary Clinton and to Mr. Donald Trump, asking them to have a meeting and to have a constructive meeting of the shared future of our countries. I have met today with Mr. Donald Trump, and in the near future I hope to do so with Ms. Hillary Clinton, with whom I have been pleased to have discussions over here in Los Pinos in the past. We may not agree in certain topics, but his presence here, Mr. Trump, demonstrates that we have a fundamental coincidence. Our respective countries are very important, one for the other. The U.S. is very important for Mexico, just the same as Mexico is very important for the United States. We share the most traveled border, through which every day legally more than 1 million people cross it, and over 400,000 vehicles. Commerce between our countries goes over $500 billion a year. We innovate and produce together. As far as national security, the daily cooperation among our governments is ever more important to face all the challenges of a complex world. So I had a very open and constructive discussion with Mr. Donald Trump. The objective of this meeting was to meet each other and to know about the bilateral relations. As far as commercial issues, I shared with Mr. Trump my conviction that the free trade of North America has done a lot of good to both the U.S. as well as Mexico. U.S. exports to Mexico are close to $200 billion a year. And according to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, more than 6 million jobs in the U.S. rely on the exports to Mexico. Our country buys more from the U.S. than to Germany, Spain, France, Italy, Japan, and the UK together. A lot of jobs in the manufacturing industry in the U.S. were not moved over to other areas of the world, precisely because together we have developed a manufacturing platform competitively in the North American continent. Together, 40% of the content of the Mexican content is made in the U.S. As partners, we need to work together to avoid all the jobs leave our region. However, this doesn't mean that the free trade agreement, the North American free trade agreement, may not be improved to benefit both parts. Telecom is an agreement that was signed over 22 years ago. The next president of the U.S. will find in my government a partner willing to build the route to modernize telecom so that it will become more effective and to generate more higher quality jobs and better paying jobs in both countries. I don't think that commerce must be considered a zero-sum game so that if only one wins and the other one loses. To the contrary, it must be seen as an effort that generates value to both parts and that makes our North American region the most competitive and innovative in the world. With regards to border issues, I have a very clear vision. The border must transform itself in an asset for our region. We have great advances in the last few years, working very closely with the Obama administration. And with the next administration, we must accelerate these efforts so that the Mexican-United States border is more efficient and safe. However, an important number of U.S. citizens chases the border as a real problem because undocumented persons and illegal drugs cross the border onto the U.S. Undocumented immigration from Mexico to the U.S. had its highest point 10 years ago, and it has slowed down consistently, even to the point of being negative in a net effect at this point. Even so, we know that continues to be a shared challenge, including the increasing number of non-Mexicans that cross our country to go to the U.S., which create, in fact, a great humanitarian crisis. However, this is a clearly incomplete vision of the border issues because it doesn't account for the illegal flows that come in southbound, including weapons and cash. Every year, thousands of dollars, millions of dollars and weapons come in from the north, which strengthen the cartels and other criminal organizations that generate violence in Mexico and obtain gains from the drug sales in the U.S. This flow must be stopped. What we need is an integral focus regarding the border that serves the challenges of undocumented people and illegal drugs and weapon flows as cash, all the same. Many lives may be saved in both sides of our borders if the criminal organizations stop receiving all the weapons and cash that today allow them to pursue their criminal endeavors. Illegal weapons, drugs, and cash flows in both directions have multiple negative consequences on both sides of the border. Our border must be seen as a joint opportunity. Both countries must invest more in it, more infrastructure, more people, and more technology to make it more safer and more efficient. I do admit that recognize that the natural right that every country has to protect its own borders. I also believe that a real collaboration effort between friends and allies is the best route to attain this. All the while, I express this to Mr. Trump to make a better border with Mexico and all the friends from Central America. It's of vital importance to both Mexico and the U.S. Equally, as far as national security, both Mexico and the U.S. work together to confront all the challenges that a complex world poses. Every day, the security agencies of both countries are exchanging information and coordinate both actions. Independent of the results of the North American election, the next presidency of the U.S. may count on the continuing integrity of the Mexican government to make it similar with the U.S. Mr. Trump, I'd like to reiterate right now what a few minutes ago I expressed to you privately. My priority as Mexican president and of my government is to protect Mexicans wherever they may be. That is my responsibility, and I will continue to comply with it with all my heart. In the United States, the Mexican population contributes with talent and creativity to development of both Mexico and the U.S. Mexican nationals in the United States are honest people, working people. They are people of goodwill that respect family, they respect life in the community, and they are respectful of the law. As such, Mexicans deserve everybody's respect. Let's continue working to solidify the relationship between Mexico and the United States based on the mutual respect, trust, and the joint attention to all the common challenges that we have. My conclusion is reiterating that the Mexican government will be totally respectful of the electoral process of the United States. I recognize its decision to sustain a constructive dialogue. A dialogue is the route that gets people closer to the people who think differently. This is the route that allows for a better understanding. Thank you very much. Let's listen to the words from the Republican candidate, Mr. Donald Trump.
Let us now hear the words of the Republican candidate to the presidency of the United States of America, Mr. Donald Trump.
Thank you. It is a great honor to be invited by you, Mr. President. A great, great honor. Thank you. We had a very substantive, direct, and constructive exchange of ideas over quite a period of time. I was straightforward in presenting my views about the impacts of current trade and immigration policies on the United States. As you know, I love the United States very much, and we want to make sure that the people of the United States are very well protected. You equally expressed your feelings and your love for Mexico. The United States and Mexico share a 2,000-mile border, a $500 billion in annual trade, and 1 million legal border crossings each and every day. We are united by our support for democracy, a great love for our people, and the contributions of millions of Mexican Americans to the United States. And I happen to have a tremendous feeling for Mexican Americans, not only in terms of friendships, but in terms of the tremendous numbers that I employ in the United States. And they are amazing people, amazing people. I have many friends, so many friends, and so many friends coming to Mexico and in Mexico. I'm proud to say how many people I employ. And the United States, first, second, and third generation Mexicans are just beyond reproach. Spectacular, spectacular, hardworking people. I have such great respect for them and their strong values of family, faith, and community. We all share a common interest in keeping our hemisphere safe, prosperous, and free. No one wins in either country when human smugglers and drug traffickers prey on innocent people, when cartels commit acts of violence, when illegal weapons and cash flow from the United States into Mexico, or when migrants from Central America make the dangerous trek, and it is very, very dangerous, into Mexico or the United States without legal authorization. I shared my strong view that NAFTA has been a far greater benefit to Mexico than it has been to the United States, and that it must be improved upon to make sure that workers, and so important, in both countries benefit from fair and reciprocal trade. I expressed that to the United States and that of the United States, that we must take action to stem this tremendous outflow of jobs from our country. It's happening every day. It's getting worse and worse and worse, and we have to stop it. Prosperity and happiness in both of our countries will increase if we work together on the following 5 shared goals. Number 1, ending illegal immigration, not just between our two countries, but including the illegal immigration and migration from Central and South Americans and from other regions that impact security and finances in both Mexico and the United States. This is a humanitarian disaster. The dangerous treks, the abuse by gangs and cartels, and the extreme physical dangers. And it must be solved. It must be solved quickly. Not fair to the people anywhere, worldwide, you can truly say, but certainly not fair to the people of Mexico or the people of the United States. Number 2, having a secure border is a sovereign right and mutually beneficial. We recognize and respect the right of either country to build a physical barrier or wall on any of its borders to stop the illegal movement of people, drugs, and weapons. Cooperation toward achieving this shared objective, and it will be shared, of safety for all citizens is paramount to both the United States and to Mexico. Number 3, dismantling drug cartels and ending the movement of illegal drugs, weapons, and funds across our border. This can only be done with cooperation, intelligence and intelligence sharing, and joint operations between our two countries. It's the only way it's going to happen. Improving NAFTA, number 4. NAFTA is a 22-year-old agreement that must be updated to reflect the realities of today. There are many improvements that could be made that would make both Mexico and the United States stronger and keep industry in our hemisphere. We have tremendous competition from China and from all over the world. Keep it in our hemisphere. Workers in both of our countries need a pay raise very desperately. In the United States, it's been 18 years. 18 years. Wages are going down. Improving pay standards and working conditions will create better results for all, and all workers in particular. There's a lot of value that can be created for both countries by working beautifully together, and that, I am sure, will happen. Number 5, keep manufacturing wealth in our hemisphere. When jobs leave Mexico, the U.S. or Central America and go overseas, it increases poverty and pressure on social services, as well as pressures on cross-border migration. Tremendous pressure. The bond between our two countries is deep and sincere, and both our nations benefit from a close and honest relationship between our two governments. A strong, prosperous, and vibrant Mexico is in the best interests of the United States and will keep and help keep for a long, long period of time America together. Both of our countries will work together for mutual good, and most importantly, for the mutual good of our people. Mr. President, I want to thank you. It's been a tremendous honor, and I call you a friend. Thank you.
Donald Trump and Mexican President Peña addressing reporters. Now let's see if they're going to take calls.
Excellent.
They are taking questions from reporters. Let's listen in.
President, we were actually together for quite some time, and I think excellent. I was with, as you know, Senator Sessions and Mayor Giuliani, and we had a tremendous, more than an hour, I think really very good. Say it, yes? No, not at all. Look, we want what's good for the United States, and the president wants what's good for Mexico. And in sitting down and in talking, we both realize that we've realized this from the beginning, that it's good for both of us. Better for both of us, actually. Yes, John? We didn't discuss that. We didn't discuss who pays for the wall. We didn't discuss.
Very hard words directed towards Mr. Trump. Would you like to take back some of those? And the wall, is it a non-starter? Is there any chance Mexico takes the wall?
Well, I'll start. I mean, nothing like an easy question like that. We did discuss the wall. We didn't discuss payment of the wall. That'll be for a later date. This was a very preliminary meeting. I think it was an excellent meeting. And we are, I think we're very well on our way. A lot of the things I said are very strong, but we have to be strong. We have to say what's happening. There is crime, as you know. There's a lot of crime and there's a lot of problems. But I think together we'll solve those problems. I really believe that the president and I will solve those problems. We will get them solved. Illegal immigration is a problem for Mexico as well as for us. Drugs are a tremendous problem for Mexico as well as us. I mean, it's not a one-way street. And we will work together and we will get those problems solved. Mr. President.
Diré de manera muy puntual que
shows absolute respect for the electoral process in the United States. I wanted to invite both candidates to both candidates, which was responded quite quickly by Mr. Trump, the candidate. So the meeting, besides the issues that we just discussed, we also talked about how relevant is the relationship among our countries, how important it is to have a strategic alliance between our countries. I also asked and showed Mr. Trump the great responsibility that I have to defend on the Mexican population, both Mexicans who are here and outside of Mexico. That there have been a misinterpretation or assertions that regrettably had hurt and had affected Mexican in its perception of his candidacy, of which I am fully respectful. Mexican people have felt hurt by the comments that have been made. But I am sure that his genuine interest is to build a relationship that will give both of our societies better welfare, that the willingness expressed of the Mexican presidency to get together with both candidates of the United States is based on that same premise, to work together, but above all, in a mutual respect among nations. This is what I have shared with candidate Trump.
This concludes this event, and we thank all of you for your attendance. This concludes this event, and we thank all of you for your attendance.
All right, we've been told buenos tardes, and the event is over. The bilateral meeting between Donald Trump, the Republican nominee for president, and the Mexican president, Enrique Peña Nieto. Let's get some response with our panel right now. Paul Begala, let me turn to you. You advise a pro-Hillary Clinton super PAC. Obviously, it looks like one of the goals of this meeting was to depict Donald Trump not as a racist, as his opponents and sometimes his own words have depicted him as, but as somebody who wants to work with Mexico, who can be presidential. What do you think?
I think he was trying to do two things at once, and he failed. He can't do two things at once, which is his brand is strength. It's in the eyes of many. It's bombast, even. We saw very little of that. And in fact, he said he didn't even raise the issue of who pays for the wall, a line so central to the Trump message that when he speaks at rallies, the audience chants it along with him. It's like Born to Run at Springsteen, okay? Everybody is singing along. And he wimped out. And if the Trump brand used to, until 1 hour ago, the Trump brand stood for anything, I think it would have been strength. And I think in the eyes of many of his supporters, they're going to say he wimped out. Will that allow him to appeal more to the middle? Very skeptical, because we're 69 days to the election. I think the voters say, okay, you're behind. This is a Hail Mary. I guess it's an Ave Maria, since he's south of the border. And I think that the folks he's trying to reach are deeply skeptical about his capacity to really change. And then his voters, his people already has, I think are going to be really angry that he went down there. He met with the Mexican president, and he didn't say the most important thing to them,
which is that they need to pay for the wall. But let me bring in Sarah Huckabee Sanders from the Trump campaign. Sarah, why didn't Mr. Trump raise the issue of Mexico paying for the wall? And what is Mr. Trump's policy when it comes to the other big event today, when he gives his immigration speech later in Arizona, that he wants a deportation force that will remove all 11 million undocumented immigrants? It does seem to be the combination of backing away from the deportation force and not mentioning to the Mexican president, you're going to pay for the wall. It does seem to be backing away from some of the rhetoric we've heard from Mr. Trump.
I don't think he's backing away from anything. If anything, I think this meeting showed what a strong leader Donald Trump is. He went to Mexico. He accepted the invitation. You have two sophisticated leaders who are willing to sit down and, for the very first time, talk about some of the things that they agreed on. And I think that that was a first step. And I don't think that Mr. Trump felt in their first meeting it was the right direction to go to talk about who would pay for the wall. And this is the first of what I think will be many meetings over the course of the campaign campaign, and particularly when Donald Trump becomes president. There are some big issues that both leaders agree have to be addressed, and that's stopping illegal immigration, securing the border on both sides, drug trafficking, human trafficking, and modernizing NAFTA. And these are really big issues that they had time to sit down in this first hour, this first meeting, to talk about some of the things they agree on, build that relationship, and continue that to work towards big solutions that we haven't seen Obama or Secretary Clinton in her role as Secretary of State be able to accomplish. If people want to continue with the status quo, then they should vote for Hillary Clinton. If they're looking for a strong leader that's willing to take big steps and bold moves, and they want to see things change, and they want solutions, then they should vote for Donald Trump.
I believe we have on our panel two voters who are not particularly enamored of either candidate. Is that a fair depiction of you, Kirsten? This is your first time on my show. Welcome to CNN. Well, what did you think? What was your response?
Well, look, I think it gave him an opportunity to look presidential, and it's true that he had a different message here than he will probably have tonight or at his rallies tomorrow, which is sort of what he does. He often will show up, and you'll sort of have good Donald Trump, and then bad Donald Trump.
This was good Donald Trump.
Yeah, and this is him acting more presidential, and I also think he would probably say this is him negotiating. This is how you negotiate. You don't come in the first time and you bring up that you're going to build for the wall. You build the wall, you're going to start to get to know each other, and then later on, down the road, you would bring that up. It looks like they had a constructive conversation. It looks like he to a certain extent, sort of won over the president, who was previously comparing him to some of the worst world leaders in history, and is now basically saying, I think I can have a constructive relationship with you. As to whether or not this is going to scare off some of his core voters, it doesn't seem that they're going to be shaken by much. As Donald Trump has famously said, he could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue. That sort of seems to be true, frankly. And so his shifting on this issue, I'm not sure is going to change that much, especially since he will probably be doubling down on a lot of the stuff he normally says when we listen to his speech tonight.
All right, so from a Democratic agnostic in the presidential race to a Republican agnostic in the presidential race, Ana Navarro, what was your response? You've been very, very critical of Donald Trump, especially when it comes to how he has talked about Latinos and the Mexican-American community.
Well, the Donald Trump I just saw, I think, has had some sort of personality transplant, because it's very different than what we have seen in the campaign trail. And look, Jake, brace yourself, because this could cause an earthquake. Lightning could strike. I think this was a very good maverick move by Donald Trump. He changed the narrative. We're no longer talking about his offensive tweet about Dwayne Wade's cousin, Nike Aldridge. He frankly gets some credit for going into what he knows is a hostile environment. Those two men up there, Peña Nieto and Donald Trump, together, combined, don't even get to 50% of favorability ratings in Mexico. He answered questions, tough questions in a tough environment, something Hillary Clinton has been unwilling to do for days and days and days and days. For the first time in his life, during this campaign, he actually said some positive, constructive things about Mexican Americans, about Hispanics. I thought he was actually pretty smart in turning this into a hemispheric thing, into not turning it just about the wall, which was what we've seen on the campaign trail. So I think we're going to see a very different Donald Trump today in Arizona, in Joe Arpaio's Arizona. But also the imagery was very strong. He was there in a podium, side by side, next to a president of a major country, talking about bilateral issues. It actually was not a bad move by Donald Trump.
Let me bring in right now, if I can, on the phone from Mexico City. We're joined by former Mexican President Felipe Calderon. Mr. President, thanks for joining us. What was your initial reaction to this event?
Well, but basically, like a lot of Mexicans, I'm very surprised, and I share some kind of indignation about this event. I believe that to invite Mr. Trump was completely unnecessary and inconvenient for the country due to the expressions and the insults that Trump has said about Mexico during a long year. So I think it was a mistake. Actually, historian Enrique Krause say this morning was a historical mistake for Mexico.
For Mexico and for the president, for President Peña, you say it's a mistake. What do you think about the fact that we heard such different language? You mentioned some of the things that Mr. Trump has said about Mexicans, obviously most famously or infamously when he announced his candidacy last summer. He described Mexicans crossing the border. He said Mexico does not send us their best people. They're dealing drugs. They're rapists, although I'm sure some of them are nice. And today he said Mexican Americans are beyond reproach, spectacular, hardworking people. What do you think?
He's a hypocrite. I don't believe in him. He's lying. He doesn't mean what he says. Actually, the more fanatic followers he has say he means what we say. Well, what kind of meaning we need to follow? Is the moment in which he says we are racist, or the moment he says we are wonderful, marvelous, hard-working people. I do believe in him, and he's a hypocrite, and he's lying. And for that reason, I think it was very, very sorry. I'm very sorry to know or to have this visit today in Mexico. I think it was a very important mistake. Following Krause as well. Krause says that tyrants should not be peace. They should be faced with dignity and courage, and that is exactly what is not happening here in Mexico.
If you had been standing there, Mr. President, what would you have said to Mr. Trump?
First place, I will not invite him by any means. And if he tried to reach me, I will not receive him by far.
So you wouldn't even invite him?
In any case, before anything, I will demand some kind of apologize about the insults and the lies about Mexican people before to take any movement. But there is some kind of naive movement related with that visit. It's clearly a movement that would support Trump's campaign. Exactly a few hours before, he is going to try to save his campaign with a message related with immigration policy. It was a very bad move for Mexico and useful movement for him. I think the Mexican government is throwing a lifeline in thinking campaign of Trump. And that was completely unnecessary and inconvenient.
All right. President Felipe Calderon, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Our panel's going to stick around.